What is going on, guys? It is Blink here, back with a new guide. Now, this guide is a full gameplay guide, but I'll be giving you tips and tricks on playing aggressive. So guys, let's get to this guide. So, we're landing at Paradise, and I don't spot any shotguns around, so I go for the SMG I can see. Another opponent tries beating me to it, although I was able to get the SMG first, and at an instant, you want to put the pressure onto your opponent. He's got no weapon, so you want to eliminate him as soon as you can, because it's a free kill. If I was that opponent, I would have avoided to try fighting for the same weapon. Don't try fighting for one weapon because that puts you in a risk of not having a guaranteed weapon. It's also a waste of a game, especially if you want to keep your stats up there. Now, since we're going to play aggressive this game, you want to find as many people as you can. If you hear gunshots up ahead, push because you know there's a chance these players have already taken damage. As long as you've got an SMG, an aggressive playstyle is possible at close ranges. Although, if you've got an AR, make sure you're not hip firing at close ranges because your best bet is to stay back a little farther and see if you can get the elimination at a range. You'll then want to grab your opponent's weapons in hopes of them being a little better for close range combat. That way you can continue your pushes more comfortably. You guys can see I pushed this player with the SMG because I heard gunfire in this approximate area. So there's a good chance this player was hurt. I was also able to catch him gathering materials, so I never ended up taking damage. Now, I get pushed as I eliminate this player, and you guys saw I made sure to grab that shotgun because it'll assist me better in close range combat. I also ended up placing down a staircase as my opponent got closer. You want to watch out when trying to place certain materials. A wall won't always work inside buildings because the walls around you can't be replaced, while a staircase will work most of the time when you're inside. So if you do try building inside, make sure you're remembering to use stairs as cover instead of walls. You guys also want to make sure you're gathering a solid amount of materials early game. I've talked about this a lot, but especially if you're playing aggressive, you'll need those mats. You might get shot in the back as you fight, and especially when you're pushing at an instant, you'll probably get pinched more often. So you'll need extra materials for cover. This opponent I just eliminated never built and gave me a super easy elimination. I then got pushed by another player, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. You'll get pushed a lot more, especially if you're the first person to notify other players around you that there's a fight going on. So make sure you're not tunnel visioning on one player. If the fight goes on a little longer, then make sure you're checking your surroundings. You might spot a player pushing you in the distance, and a few shots towards him will allow you to continue fighting that 1v1 until that other opponent gets too close. Right here, you guys saw I kept spraying this opponent because I had the high ground, not allowing my opponent to get close. I continued my spray because he continued to build. If you've got the high ground and your opponent's trying to build to you, continue that spray because he's not putting on that pressure back. Now, if I was my opponent in this situation, I would have backed up and built enough cover to allow me to shoot back. This would have stopped my aggressive playstyle and made me play a little more passive. Anytime your opponent is vulnerable just taking shots at you, you want to set yourself up to take shots back. This will stop their constant spam of spray. Now, right here, I'm kind of just sitting there because my last opponent sat in the middle of the road crouch spamming. He did have mats, so I'm not sure why he was trying to bait me into getting away. Or maybe he was just trying to make a friend. Although we've got no time for that and we gotta keep finding more players. So I've spotted a gingerbread man up ahead and I've got to be a little more careful because that shows that he's got some experience. He ends up getting boxed in, and what I believe he did wrong here is use that pickaxe to break out right in front of me. The first issue with this is that he's got a delay as he pulls out his weapon. Now, the second issue is that it was done right in front of me, which grants me free shots. So what he should have done is edited the wall right beside me to get himself out, and then attempted to build himself up. Was just not a smart execution by him. So, we're heading out of Paradise Palms, and we push towards a player I spot. Now, I land on the hill to have that high ground without even building. Pull out my sniper because that's usually the first thing I do to give me a chance to deal a critical amount of damage. Those hit sniper shots are just so important in aggressive playstyles because at an instant you can go for a push for a super good chance of getting the elimination. It also gives you a chance to avoid fighting multiple players at the same time because you'll get that elimination before any other players get close. When you play aggressive, your goal is to finish the fight you started quickly. You want to avoid having a three-way fight because that can take much longer and it'll make it harder to close off both fights. Now, right here, this fight was in a pretty awkward spot. With the tree in the way, you're limited to where you can build. This opponent wouldn't stop spraying, so I lined up my crosshair and let him break the wall I built. Since he was spraying that same weapon the whole time, the plan was to catch him on the reload as he broke the wall. This would have given me an extra second to put in a little more damage towards him. Now, right here, I could have played it differently, but it's still a good way of fighting your opponents in tight spaces. Catching your opponents on the reload or weapon switch grants you that extra second. Up ahead, I spot a player behind his walls and make the push on him. He does end up shooting back, and I've got to use walls with the stair combo because the stairs don't fully accidentally build above you when you're pushing on a hill. We end up building for the high ground and I was able to grab it. The moment I hit this player with the shotgun, I noticed he had no shield, so I went for a push towards him to get that finisher. Once again guys, you want to find simple things that allow you to apply more pressure. Having no shields is a big one, and as I said, going for higher kill games, those fights better be quick. As I eliminated this opponent, I got shot at by another player. Built myself right for the high ground, and instead of waiting for this player to get closer, if you get pushed, just build yourself up before your opponent attempts to build up. Just an easy way of getting the high ground before him. Place down cover as I use the edit function to get some surprise peeks on my opponent to get the finisher. I also dropped myself down lower after I had the high ground. I knew my opponent was down on the ground, so as long as I'm a floor above him, I still have the high ground. Staying all the way up top when your opponent's all the way down below you would have made it harder to line up shots and would have given other players around me potential lineup shots towards me. When playing aggressive, staying close to the storm is also a great thing to do because you'll be able to potentially catch players coming out needing to heal. Just an easy way of getting some free kills. Built myself above this player and made sure to place down a floor underneath as I was almost directly above him. The floor gives me an extra layer of support to avoid getting my materials shot out quicker. As I hit the shotgun headshot, I went for the push for the final shot. Any critical hits, I'll use that to my advantage and go for the push. Now, back to when I mentioned the storm, I also want to mention that you should be paying attention to where the battle bus flies in. I've given this tip before to place your marker at the end of where the battle bus flies in. That way you'll know the exact path the battle bus went. Say you flew in towards Pleasant Park first, that'll usually mean more players dropping in around that side of the map, which means most of my opponents would be towards the left side of the safe zone. Just a quick tip to take note of. Spot a player up ahead, and the default play is that first initial sniper shot. Get the tag and continue spraying with my P90. I should have used an AR instead because this player was a little far for the P90 range. I continued my spray because he never built, just kinda ran backwards. I'll admit this was a little risky because of how long I was basically standing still for. The better thing to do was once again use that AR as the fight would have been over a little quicker. If I did end up missing a lot of my AR shots, then a simple push would have kept me mobile and would have been the next best option. Up ahead, I spot another player. Now I want to mention that you can see in most of my fights, there was another player that was always close by. This is why I've mentioned that you need to play aggressive to finish off most of the fights as soon as you can. Getting shot by another player while you fight puts you in a pretty bad position and will sometimes lead to the end of your game. You can see in this last example, my opponent did have the high ground for a split second. Although after hitting that critical shotgun shot, I continued my spray, not allowing any sort of build up for my opponent. Say my opponent did successfully build himself up above me. I would have stopped my spray the moment I knew he's got way too many materials I have to break to penetrate towards him. Building up early when you know the spray won't help anymore will give your opponent less time to set up for any shots back or even attempting to get off one mini. Now fast forward to the end of the game, there are two more players left and one of them was inside the house. Now the other one ran towards the house and as he ran I hit my snipe and pulled out my AR for the finisher. I don't want the other player to get the elimination, although surprisingly the other player ends up somehow sneaking to my left. And the moment he shot at me, I kept rebuilding my walls until he actually ended up shooting at the other part of my structure, and that's when I peeked over to take shots back. Noticing when your opponents are shooting at another part of your structure which doesn't risk you getting shot at as you peek up is a good thing to notice. By peeking up, you get some free shots because he's not focusing on you. He's focusing on your materials. This is another great tip to take note of when playing aggressive. Ended up trapping the last player for the win. Well, hopefully I've helped some people out, and a like and a sub would be greatly appreciated as it does help me a lot. Anyways guys, thanks for watching and hope you have a great rest of your day and night, and I'll see you on the next one.